So that was cool. I think it was cool. Good morning, Jake Living Payne here with you for a little coffee and conversation. My morning coffee, and spoiler alert, apparently my coffee mug is possessed because when I mix my coffee, it makes this weird staticky bubbling sound, which couldn't figure out what that was yesterday. I thought some equipment was going wrong, but apparently the mug or the coffee itself, this sledge stuff right here, instant coffee here, is for some reason it reacts with the mug. So we'll see how long the mug lasts. We'll see how long this show lasts. See how long everything lasts. I'm Jay Cleveland Payne, and I am here to have a little fun and talk to you guys about the joy and the love that is the news and news of the day. I have a newsletter called 8 Things to Talk About, which is a part of something called the Conversation Project, which is homed at, which is not proper grammar, this is conversation.com. Might help out a lot. So, and every single weekday, Monday through Friday, we produce 8 things for you to talk about through the entire day to people that you know, either at work or around the world, or however you're getting around there. And so this has been something we're doing to be more conversational in our conversations and get a chance to just interact more or less here or there. So we're going to go through the 8 stories that made it into the newsletter. There's a link to the newsletter inside of the description on this video. So if you're not a subscriber, you can click that link and click a link to subscribe. If you just want to read along and get more details, there are links to the story sources, every single one. Now, I've been getting really, really long in the writing again because it's easier to just sort of chop out less. And of course, then you have to read and edit. But hopefully we'll do more editing and have more pithiness in the actual articles coming forward. So quick sip of coffee. You see me running your feed, make sure you turn your sound on so you can hear the words coming out of my mouth. And if you want to help the efforts that we have going here, you can just go to buymeacoffee.com/jclevelandpayne. And that is a way to send funds so we can get our coffee and pay for other bills, like for either on a one-on-one basis, buy like a single cup of coffee, or we have subscription coffees, coffee clubs, if you will, where you buy certain levels of coffee every single week, a subscription to a membership program for this. And there are some inside stuff for being a part of this, including for the entire multimedia, whatchamacallit, that I call More Better Media, specifically for this and coffee conversation, having coffee, having some conversation about the news, and maybe we'll go back to doing some commentary here or there. We'll see. We did commentary a little bit over the summer when I did Bubble Fridays, and we'll see if Bubble Fridays comes back. We might test it tomorrow, but we'll see if Bubble Fridays comes back and if commentary in general comes back as well. So thank you to anybody who's popping in live for this thing in Bobber, or anybody who is popping in the future, as this thing's going to live in perpetuity forever on the interwebs. So let's go ahead and get into the spill of things. This is today's newsletter, which is 8 things to talk about for Thursday, the 27th of May. And hopefully, if I can click the right buttons and click properly, we'll be going through very well. So as you see here, there are links to subscribe to the email and become a coffee supporter there as well. Now, the 8 stories, they are posted here in the newsletter in the order of engagement. Which one's got the most engagement this year? We'll do a little commentary on that in a moment. At the end of the week, tomorrow, we will, after I produce this newsletter, we'll shut down the responses and we will start tabulating for the weekend for the weekly wrap-up podcast, which is the top 10 stories per you, counting down like Casey Kasem used to do, 10 to 1, plus the almost relevant story of the week, which is the story at the very, very bottom, the one that had the least response. I usually have no idea what that is because I don't do a large dive until that Friday. So I usually have no idea what it is until it shows up. I usually have a great idea what's going to happen for the big stories. And this story at number 1 today is more than likely going to be the top story of the week, unless something very, very crazy happens between now and tomorrow morning, which we thought something happened yesterday. And that's the number 2 story. Let me get into it in order. This story got 56.62% of the engagement of everyone who responded in the last span of time, last 30 hours or so that we had for going over this news story. No, for news stories. This was a story that I saw earlier in the day. Took a few hours to actually put it in the queue and actually pushed it back too much later in the evening last night, because other actual stories of real consequences popped up, or things that seemed like they were more timely were there. This is one I figured would get some response and probably be pretty high, even though it was posted late. It posted late in the evening, and it posted at #1. And I believe this will be, unless something odd happens, a #1 story for the week, because just the sheer numbers. At 56% of a day's catch, it's probably going to be well above whatever the week's catch is. Brad Pitt gets big win in custody battle against Angelina Jolie. And because I want to save time for talking about the next story, we're going to go over this quickly. But you can go to the newsletter, go to msn.com. It's the aggregator we got it from, or search Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie. And if Angelina will probably get you things on the Eternals, Brad Pitt will probably get you more towards this custody battle here. They have been battling for years, since they broke up in 2016 over the rights of the kids. Angelina Jolie basically has had full custody of their children since their split. They have 6 children together. One of them is an adult, 19. The rest of them, Pax, 17, Zahara, 16, Shiloh, 14. 12-year-old twins, Vivian and Knox, are now allowed to have joint custody, split custody, half and half time down the line with their dad, Brad Pitt. We're going to see, because Angelina is still fighting this, whether this actually stands, because as it's stated, this ruling is tentative, but most likely going to happen. There's still some fights going on. Going deeper into the story, there's some back and forth where Angelina was, basically complaining about the judges and stuff like that, basically saying the whole matter was unfair to her, and their children should be with her 100% of the time. If not, if anything less, it's not really good. But Brad Pitt now has joint custody of his kids. Rich people find ways to make these things happen, and these kids are, like I said, one of them's adult. Most of them they're all over. Like the twins are 12, so they'll be 13 soon. They're all basically teenagers. They're at that stage where, there's angsty stuff, but they can understand everything that's going on, and so they probably have a better understanding of what's going on between the parents than their parents do from their perspective. We will see whether it turns into a thing, whether we do more talking about Brad Pitt and Angelina going forward. Now, the story that is the actual most important story of the day was the San Jose VTA shooting. 10 people killed, including the person who opened fire, the employee. Now, this story gets really, really convoluted and really just out of way fast. But the Valley Transportation Authority, the light rail system in San Jose, had a shooting at one of the stations. 10 people were died, including the shooter. Now, the whole thing started off that morning with the shooter setting his house on fire. And while people were responding to that, pretty much as that was happening, the shooting happened. These were people that were known to the shooter. These are co-workers. In an interview I heard from someone talking about the Valley Transportation Authority, the VTA has about 2,100 total employees, working employees for the train system, light rail system, and that's specifically for light rail. So they know each other. They're a very tight-knit, close working group of folks. The shooter's name is identified as 57-year-old Sam Cassidy. The names of the people who perished in the actual incident are these: Alex Ward Fritch, age 49, Paul Dela Cruz Mega, age 42, Tapaji Singh, age 36, Adrian Bazilla, age 29, Jose de Jesus Hernandez III, apologies for that, age 35, Timothy Michael Romo, age 49, Michael Joseph Rondunikin, age 40, Alvadehab Aljamandan, age 63, and Lars Kepler Lane, age 63 as well. The jobs included bus and light rail operators, mechanics, linemen, and assistant superintendents. One had worked for the Transit Authority since 1999. So thoughts, prayers going out to the families who are grieving on this. We sent thoughts and prayers to the family of the shooter as well, because there's someone's family member and they have to deal with the question marks going there as well. There's still no motive, still no idea why things are going on. Still, the whole situation is out there. And one thing that was brought up is there's been no mention of what weapons were used in this actual involvement. Now, this marked, I believe, the 17th mass shooting in the last 7 or so days. So a lot of these things happening right now. gun reform is something that gets brought up a lot when these things happen. And we'll see how fast it takes for the gun reform shout down by both sides begins in this one. We'll take a quick sip of coffee as we move to the story at number 3, which is interesting because it was a story that was listed yesterday. Powerpuff Girls live action reboot pilot was scrapped for being too campy, says CW CEO. So we won't spend a lot of time on this one. I'm going to assume that you watched this yesterday, which is a big assumption. But this is a story that was posted later in the timeline. In fact, it was early yesterday morning when it was posted, and it was just so high up with the things that just being interesting that it made it to the timeline. Well, since it's in the same 24, 34 hours of this time frame, it's here, and it's even a higher ranking because it had more time to gain further. What happened was a CW had a pilot for the Powerpuff Girls, which I believe they're just going to call Powerpuff because they weren't so much girls. And there were leaked scenes that showed the actresses playing the characters basically in costumes that looked like them from the cartoon. And people thought, man, this is going to be really, really, really bad. And so what happened? Well, apparently it was really, really, really bad. And the CW CEO and the people who, of course, make these decisions scrapped the pilot. The show will more or less go on. We had a lot of talk about other CW shows that aren't going on. The show's apparently going on. All the stars attached to the show are still there. They just have to do a pilot that's probably more angsty and CW-ish as opposed to campy. We'll see how that goes. At number 4, the MyPillow guy, Mike Lindell, reportedly kicked out of Republican governor's event. What does that mean? Well, that means the pull for Mike Lindell, the CEO of MyPillow, who is a pretty good, actually, from all practical purposes, a pretty good CEO for a company. Does a lot of great things for his folks. And there's a great story about recovery from addiction. Just apparently is just too addicted to the realm of politics, Republican politics, and sort of being in the circle, the orbit of Donald Trump and Trumpian thought processes. He apparently went to the Republican governor's event in Tennessee, got there, found out that his credentials had been revoked when he had credentials before. And so when he decided, to show up and sort of get in the faces of people who weren't pushing big lie stuff, he couldn't because literally his ticket wasn't punched. So we will find out more about this as he continues to be a thing. Of course, he had his failed social media platform came through. I think he may have come up with some sort of, I think he even says he's running for some sort of office or something here or there. I can't remember that one. There's so many Mike Lindell things going on. But he's talked about the fact that MyPillow is losing lots and lots of money, lots of stock, not being in a lot of stores, mostly because the public face of the enterprise is making an ass of itself, to be honest, and not for necessarily a good reason. We saw the same thing with Papa John, as Papa John's popped out when he was all over the place. And then we hear, he likes to use racial slurs and just really bad language and just say stupid stuff. And that turned into a thing. MyPillow turned to the thing with Mike Lindell, although MyPillow guy is more of a slight in its own selves, where he is doing what he can to, play his next role, play his free speech, play his leadership and his thought-provoking stuff. The problem is that's not what people are hired him to be. He and people are paying for him to produce MyPillows. At least they were. We'll see how many more MyPillows are produced going forward. Here's a story, a blast from the past, specifically May 25th, 2020, this time last year, where Amy Cooper, who was falsely called a black bird watcher in Central Park, called 911 on a black bird watcher, saying that he was harassing her when he was just watching birds and basically complaining that she needed to put her dog on a leash, is now suing a former employer because she got fired. The short story in this one, this was Central Park Karen, I believe. Amy Cooper worked for Franklin Templeton, and she was in New York City's Central Park walking her dog without a leash, just being a bad dog mom, essentially. And there was a bird watcher named Christian Cooper, who was sitting there watching the birds and being disturbed by the fact that this lady had her dog run around scaring birds off. He asked her to leash her dog. He picked up his phone and started recording the incident while she picked up her phone and called 911 to say she was being harassed by a black man in the park. black man in Cooper's Park was sitting on a bench saying, "Please curb your dog." Because there was video evidence from Christian Cooper, we got to see what Amy Cooper was doing, and the world was outraged. In fact, the next day, Franklin Templeton fired Amy Cooper for the bad press. She eventually got another job someplace else, making probably the same sort of big time money that those folks do. But it was a pretty big deal. Now, she has spoken out and saying that it was a mistake to focus on. Well, Christian Cooper actually has focused on the fact that the words about this, saying it's a mistake to focus on one individual in an op-ed in Washington Post about racial profiling and what's going on and all the Karen stuff that happened last summer, or actually for the past couple of years. But last summer seemed like a pretty big Karen issue when we were dealing with both COVID and Karens. But we're going to see how this actual suit comes to pass. The article, the piece I'm reading right here, doesn't have any dollar amount, just suing former employer, which people have right to do. This is a story next that's a little bit convoluted, so you may want to go click the source and do some more work on this one. But the Arizona Recount tech company backs out of the election audit. Quote, "They were done." And this is coming from not so much from cyber ninjas, but from a company called Wake TSI with a contract that ended on May 14th for the Maricopa County, Arizona ballot recount. Now, Cyber Ninjas was the group that essentially was running the recount, but their contractor to actually do the work, contractors actually do recounts, was Wake TSI. And because of a pause in the work for, what we thought was a pause in the work for the fact that the facilities being used for the recount was taken over by high school graduations because they were on the books. Apparently, somewhere in that timeline, TSI decided they were done because the contract was over and didn't want to switch back. So the recount essentially is done because the auditor that was doing it, the actual auditor, is done with the recount. We'll see if another auditor comes in to finish it, or if Cyber Ninjas just does it on their own going forward. Quick sip of coffee going here. Remember, if you want to support what's going on here, you can click on any of the links. Here's a link right there. Any links inside of any of our platforms here on the newsletter. We have advertisements on the website. There are advertising and sponsors in the feeds as well. And we have some people who highlight on the podcast. And of course, you can just go to buymeacoffee.com/J Cleveland Payne and buy me and anybody in the rest of the crew coffee, or basically pay for our stuff. It helps pay for bandwidth, it helps pay for time, it helps pay for pretty pictures like that to keep things going. And so wrap this thing up today. We have a very long one in a moment, so bear with me. The Tokyo Olympics, Asahi Shimbun, which I totally butchered, newspaper says Japan games must be canceled. The quick word on this one of the sponsors of the or partners of the Olympics is a newspaper called Asahi Shimbun, and it is basically writing op-eds against what it's supposedly working towards, the Tokyo Olympics. And it's pretty much a simple thing. The wave of COVID-19 going on in Japan and in areas in the immediate area is so bad, no one can really see how anyone can, one, protect the safety of the athletes, and two, just put on a show with the people that are just not doing so well. The weird thing is 83% of the people in Japan don't want the games there as well. And so what's going to happen with all the people who are supposed to show up and bring money to the area, although Olympics more or less break even at best, and bring prestige to the organizers and the people who are supposed to be in the Olympics, who've been waiting for now 5 years to hit this event? It's going to be a showdown that will take a little time, and we'll see what happens. The Olympics will start next month. We shall see. And this very long article here, you might want to go ahead and click on and read it yourself. We pulled it from npr.org, or you can look at our newsletter. You can go to the link in the description here to read it there. You can just search for it. But Eric Carle, the author of The Very Hungry Caterpillar, died at the age of 91. Not really much to go into this. It's a very deep look into his background. Most people don't really know how people got to where they are and things like this. This book, of course, 50 years old as of, I believe, 2 years ago. So it's been something that's been read by kids all over and over, including me, my wife, and our kids over their span of time. My daughter being the last one to read it only at the age of 9 right now. He illustrated more than 70 books over time, and he did this for quite some time. And it was just a love of colors, a love of storytelling, and a love of art that he had for forever. He tells a story in this article about his parents being immigrants from Germany, but then they immigrated back to Germany, and they went back to Germany during World War II. And because of that, things were a little different in those times. And after he actually graduated from art school, he came back to the States and was more than happy to be in a world full of color. That is Eric Carle, the author of The Very Hungry Caterpillar, who died this week at the age of 91. This story, I'm very glad, made it into the top 8 today, so we had a chance to talk about it, because this is one I was worried about because it was lingering. But as we said, we only talk about the stories that you guys tell us to talk about. The 8 stories that you say most conversation on. This one is at the very bottom of that one. So that is your 8 things to talk about for today. I think we did a fairly good job of being non-rambly today. Fairly good. We'll see, going forward. We'll see if we get this in tomorrow. I don't think I can't remember if I did this on Monday, but I think we did one last week, and we try and do these again. We will see how these things work out. They'll get a lot less rambly, a lot more focused, and probably more scripted as time goes on. It's the joys of summer vacation, where I don't have to take the kid to school, so I can come to work earlier, so I can get up and do things and kind of move on my own schedule, as opposed to making lunches and getting kids ready for school. It helps sometimes. If you want to help with this one, buy me a coffee. Visit buymeacoffee.com/JClevelandPayne and buy me and the crew a couple brews, and sometimes they're actual brews, to get us through our days and get us through our work. If you enjoy what you're seeing, and you don't feel the urge to toss any money our way, give us some comments. Reply to us on our social media feeds. This is theconversation.com. Search for us there on Facebook and on Instagram, and of course on Twitter, @TH_conversation. Most of the love comes from Twitter responses, to be honest. We can use plenty more love on Facebook, but most of the actual responses and numbers, Twitter rules the roost. So if you want to really see how things go on, check us out on Twitter. If you want to see what the top 5 stories are in the queue, what's in range, go to our website. This is theconversation.com. Also the place to find information on the podcast, on the newsletter, on more behind the scenes stuff like this, and some contests and fun things going on. So for all of the crew behind the Conversation Project, and this is theconversation.com, I'm Jay Cleveland Payne, the face, the voice, and the guy who will take the credit, because I'm the face and the voice, sipping on coffee, getting through the morning, and getting ready for a full day. Hopefully these stories will give you some things to talk about with your work crew or your crew. And we'll do it again, at least newsletter wise, tomorrow. Of course, tomorrow, Friday, we will publish work on the work for publishing the weekly wrap-up podcast that we do, goes from Friday to Friday. And we'll give you some way to understand how that works out and explain that a little bit as well. Hopefully without being too rambly as well. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining us live or in the future in this one. I am, as I said 4 times, I got to work on that. I have to work on endings. I know. I'm Jay Cleveland Payne. Thank you so much. We'll do it again tomorrow.